the legacy of ancient observatories. Cosmic curiosity endures. Watch the sun come up, but this time watch it in 5 places at once, thousands of miles apart. On a wide green plain, it rises straight into a gap between two enormous standing stones. In a jungle far across the world, it slides into a narrow slot cut in the wall of a temple. Over a desert, it climbs the smooth, slanted face of a giant pyramid. In a valley between two rivers, it crests the top step of a tall tower built of mud brick. And in another land entirely, it shines through a small window in a round stone tower and lands on a single mark drawn inside. Different stones, different gods. Some of these mornings are thousands of years apart, and yet it is the same sun and the very same idea. For 20 episodes now, we have traversed the whole world and its whole history, following one simple habit. People look up, and then they build something so that they can look up better. Tonight, in our last episode together, we walk back through all of it, every one of those places, one more time, not to learn something new about each, but to finally see the one thing they all share. We begin where the sky was written straight into the stone. On the plains of Europe, people with no writing and no math as we know it, dragged up huge stones and set them in rings. They placed them so carefully that, on the longest and shortest days of the year, the sun rises or sets exactly through a chosen gap. A calendar you could walk right inside. Nearby sits something even older, a great mound of earth and stone with a low passage running deep into the middle of it. For a few mornings around midwinter, and only then, the rising sun creeps through a small slot above the door, crawls all the way down the tunnel, and fills the room at its heart with gold. For about 17 minutes, then it is gone for another year. That was built 5,000 years ago, older than the pyramids, and it still works perfectly every single winter. Now, to the first cities between two great rivers and their tall temple mountains of mud brick climbing to the sky in giant steps. Here, people first did the thing that changed everything. They wrote the sky down. Night after night, they pressed what they saw into wet clay and saved it. And once you have years of records, the sky's rhythms begin to show. Their heirs in a famous city on the river learned to predict, to say before it happened when the moon would go dark. They could not yet explain why, but their long columns of numbers told them when, and that, quietly, is where science begins. Down another great river, in the land of the pyramids, a whole kingdom was built around the sky. Their giant tombs sit almost perfectly square to the 4 directions. Their temples were lined up to catch the light of certain stars, and one bright star mattered most of all. When it returned to the dawn sky after weeks away, they knew the great flood that fed them was coming. The sky handed them the calendar of the entire year. Now, far to the east, emperors kept watch on the heavens without a break for thousands of years. It was a royal duty. A sudden new star or a comet could be a warning meant for the emperor himself. So official watchers on raised platforms recorded everything and passed the task to the next in an unbroken chain. No people on earth watched the sky for longer, without ever stopping. Turn to the great land in the south, where watchers turned the sky into pure mathematics. They measured time by the moving shadow of a simple upright stick and filled books with numbers, using tools like the zero that the whole world still counts with today. And here is something new for you. Long after the ancient days, only about 300 years ago, a king in a city called Jaipur poured that same old love of the sky into giant stone. He raised instruments the size of buildings, great stone ramps and curved stone bowls made for one thing only, to measure the sky. His largest sundial stands as tall as a small hill, and its shadow still tells the time. Right now, today, to within about 2 seconds, no lenses, no machines, just carved stone and the sun. The ancient way made giant. On the islands even further east, a careful people borrowed a whole system of sky watching from a neighbor and then kept it running faithfully for 1,000 years. Guardians of a gift. Back to the west, in the old lands of Persia, kings built grand observatories with whole teams of astronomers working side by side like an institute. One had a measuring arc so enormous it was sunk right into the ground. There they gathered the best of Babylon, Greece and India into one great royal book of star tables. Observe, write it down, then correct it. That patient method is exactly how science still works. Now cross the widest ocean to the Americas, where people watched the same sky as everyone else, yet completely alone, out of all contact with a single civilization we have met so far. Deep in the jungle, one people counted the days into calendars so long and so exact that they outlived the very cities that built them. A round stone tower still stands there, its windows set to flame one bright wandering light. The planet we call the evening star. Further north, another people believed the sun was their own responsibility, that it needed their help just to keep rising. Their great temple was built so that, twice a year, the sun climbed up exactly through the notch between its twin towers. And here is this tour's weird discovery. On a dry ridge in Peru stand 13 low stone towers in a single row like teeth along the top of the hill. Stand in the right spot, and across the year the sunrise walks slowly along that row from one tower to the next. It reaches the end and turns back. A horn calendar reads straight off the horizon. They were built more than 2000 years ago. It is the oldest thing in all the Americas, built purely to watch the sun, and most of the world only learned to treasure it a few short years ago. And then there are the observatories with no walls at all, no stone, nothing you could ever photograph. Sailors cross the largest ocean on Earth with the sky held entirely inside their heads. A map of rising and setting stars, memorized whole, without one word of it written down. In Africa, the stars lived in story and in song. A vast library of the sky, carried in the voice, handed from parent to child, and never once written on a page. In the frozen far north, seafarers and farmers read the seasons of their own skyline, marking where the sun rose against familiar hills and rooftops. And one Greek, long ago, built the strangest observatory of all. Inside his own head, he plucked a string, heard simple numbers hiding inside music, and dared to imagine the entire sky was quietly singing them. Now look back at all of them at once, laid side by side, and the pattern jumps right out at you. Every single one of them began with the very same instrument, not a telescope, the horizon. That plain line where the sky meets the land, and the spot along it where the sun comes up. And nearly everyone is anchored to the same 2 days. Midsummer and midwinter, the sun's two turning points. Find those, and you can hold the whole year in your hand. The real technology was never the stone, it was patience. Watching carefully and handing what you found to someone not yet born. Watching that took far longer than any single life. And it was never only about crops. The sky was always tangled up with meaning, with harvests and with kings, with gods and fear and music and the dead. To watch the sky was to ask what everything means. And here is the part that stays with you. Almost everywhere, the knowledge outlived the people who made it. The count outlived the jungle cities. The royal tables outlived the empires. The memorized chants outlived the voyages that they guided. Not all of it survived though. We were very nearly robbed of so much of this. Stones were pulled down and hauled off to build walls. Tombs were dug open and emptied. And in the age of conquest, whole libraries of painted books were thrown onto fires, and centuries of patient watching turned to ash in a single afternoon. But so much of it came through, and today, at long last, we guard it. The finest of these places are now protected and treasured by the entire world. Crowds still gather at the standing stones for the midsummer sunrise. At that ancient mountain island, thousands of people enter a lottery every year for just a few seats in the room when the midwinter light comes crawling in. In quiet villages, old day keepers still count the calendar the old way. Great voyaging canoes are sailing again by the stars, and those giant stone instruments still tell the time faithfully to this very day. And the ancient watching still holds up the modern world. Those long records let later thinkers build the first real models of the heavens. An old Greek star list became the seed of our star maps. And that patient method, observe, tabulate, correct, is simply how all of science is done now. Even today, we raise our newest giant telescopes under the darkest skies that are left, over African deserts, on lonely ocean mountain tops, standing quite literally on the same ground the old watchers chose. And we are learning, slowly, to do it with respect. Because to some of those people, that mountain sky is still holy. And maybe that is the real lesson of this whole long journey. The sky was never owned by anyone. No single people got all of it right. But every single one saw something true that the others had missed. The sky belonged and belongs to everyone who has ever looked up. Our story ends here, right at the edge of a brand new beginning. Because right about now, in a quiet workshop in Europe, Someone fits two little pieces of curved glass into the two ends of a tube. A toy, at first, a spyglass. And one stubborn man in Italy does the one thing nobody had quite done before. He turns that little tube away from the ships out at sea, and he points it up at the sky. And in a single night, he sees more than all of these watchers in all of their towers had seen in thousands of years. Mountains on the moon, tiny moons of their own, circling another world. The horizon was the first instrument. This glass was the second. And from here, everything changes. But that is another story, for another time. As for us, we have come all the way. From the very first person who ever noticed that the sky repeats itself, to a row of little towers on a ridge, to a small tube of glass. Thank you for walking the whole road with us. From that first campfire, all the way to here. For looking up, with us, every step of the way. The sky is still up there tonight, the very same one they watched. Go outside some evening soon and look up. You are the next watcher now.